Warning.
Watch very closely now. 3, 2, 1. Bzow! Check that out.
The following podcast features terrible jokes.
You know you can use Hot Wheels cars when you need to make a saving throw in D&D? Every car is die-cast.
Usually about board games.
We want the fun. Gotta have that fun.
Must insist that no one attempt to recreate any joke performed on this podcast.
We had less technical issues than $1 million company.
All right!
This is Boards and Swords.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Boards and Swords. This is a podcast featuring bad jokes, good folks, and some tabletop games. Who am I? I know it's been a month, but I'll remind you, my name's Chris Renshaw, and I'm going to flip it over to my partner in crime, Mr. Philip Herbig.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Monday, June 10th. It's June.
It is June.
It was 2018 last week, man.
No, both last week and also like 10 years from now, or 10 years from today.
That's crazy.
So joining us also, we have Andrew Fischer from Earthborne Games. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good. The Earthborne crew just did a trip out to Costa Rica.
I saw that.
I just got back, so hopefully you guys won't catch any of my jet lag here. I've just got to keep the energy level up for a couple hours. So.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is that he left Costa Rica for us.
Oh.
Yep.
So for those that aren't familiar, what is Earthborne Games?
Yeah, Earthborne Games. We are a game studio founded just a few years ago by Andrew Devarro, and we are a kind of small studio. Most of us are formerly of Fantasy Flight Games, and our first game kickstarted a couple years back called Earthborne Rangers, and we just recently it came out. We did a reprint Kickstarter. We got some pretty good, awesome reviews from places like Shut Up and Sit Down, and we are launching a few other cool games here coming up. So we're kind of a one-game studio that's now growing and expanding into all sorts of new, exciting stuff. I guess one of our we'll probably dive into Rangers a bit more, but one of the important elements of Earthborne Games is that we try to approach games a little bit differently and a little more responsibly in a few different ways. We try to make our games environmentally sustainable, or as sustainable as possible, and with as little environmental impact as possible. We also try to approach our themes we try not to just approach the themes of our games with the same kind of like violence first mentality, and we try to kind of take that same positivity that we put towards the production of our games to some of the design and themes and storytelling of our games as well. It's
one of the few places where the design and the like physical development is almost like interwoven.
Yeah, we try to, right, as much as we can, but there's limitations.
Yeah, Rusted Beetle pointed out also, no pun included, recently talked about.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
their video was fun.
Always.
I obviously the Shut Up and Sit Down video we had was very good, and I was very excited about that. But in some ways, I was excited about no pun included, just because they're often fairly critical, right? So it's kind of interesting to see their perspective on the game and like what points they bring up.
That their dry humor is always really nice.
I also really liked, no pun included, did this really cool thumbnail, and then they did a whole post for their patrons about this thumbnail of like he's like peering through these bushes made out of our cards, and it turns out it just performed awful. Like they A/B tested it with just like their just base like standard Gen Z smiling face type thumbnail, and the crappy Gen Z smiling face thumbnail did way better. So I was super disappointed because the bush thumbnail was so much cooler than the one they ended up changing it over to.
Yep. All right, well, we're going to get back to talking about Earthborne Rangers and Earthborne Games some more, but first we have some news.
News!
Did you know there's a World of Warcraft themed ceiling fan? It's really a fantasy. All right. So I don't know what I think about this, but it was I saw it interesting in that both I think I didn't know that Final Fantasy 14, big MMO RPG that kind of I feel like it blew up during COVID. That was kind of like everybody's kind of having to sit in front of their computers, and that was kind of the big thing where a lot of big WoW players were moving into like what else is out there because they weren't as happy on that. But there's going to be a Final Fantasy 14 tabletop role playing game, and the starter set is already having a reprint. It's not even out yet.
Oh wow.
So Square Enix has announced that the Final Fantasy 14 starter set will undergo an early reprint ahead of its scheduled release. It translates the expansive lore of Eorza from its original MMO format to a tabletop game. This adaptation allows players to experience the game's universe from a new perspective, participating as either heroes or the game master to create new narrative experiences. So the game is set for release in September 2024, and it shows highlights strong pre-release interest from the community. Now, I imagine that's also a big thing because I would imagine this is probably also going to do really well in like Japan. So it's not just like the U.S. audience that's a fan of this. Like you've also got Square Enix. that's not a some trivial company. But I mean,
There, whatever.
yeah. Russell Bill says, I see they're manufacturing at GW stock levels. Yes, but unlike GW stock levels, they realize they need to reprint before the release, not like they release it and then it immediately sells out, and they're like, oh, right. But I've listened to people talk about Fantasy Flight, or excuse me, not Fantasy Flight, Final Fantasy 14. I know it's got its fans. So of course, with an MMO like that, you're gonna have like a huge world to set things in. It honestly makes me wonder why. Like I know there was a World of Warcraft like D&D source book like way back in like 3.5, I think. But I'm wondering like why no one's done that. Like this just seems like it would be perfect for it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think they had a World of Warcraft tabletop role-playing game book at some point.
That's what I'm saying. I think it was like in like D&D 3.5. I feel like in those.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it kind of launched like alongside Vanilla.
Yeah.
When original WoW originally came out.
Yeah, because I feel like I've seen the book somewhere before, but
Warcraft, the role-playing game, first edition rulebook, July 28, 03.
03. So actually, that
Wow.
would be a year before World of Warcraft came out. Okay. It's easy for me to keep track of how old World of Warcraft is because it came out the same year as my stepdaughter, and the same year I graduated. 04 was just a great year. All right.
Well, I guess I'm not super surprised there haven't been many. Blizzard just hasn't done much licensing and tabletop licensing in general. Like obviously at Fantasy Flight we did some Blizzard licensing back kind of in that era, and then I think they did like a Small World. They licensed Days of Wonder for a bit, but like
Small World of Warcraft.
Z-Man did like a Wrath of Lich King Pandemic or something, but like short of like Asmodee releasing a couple small licensed games, Blizzard just hasn't done much with the licensing games. So I guess I'm not surprised. Tabletop RPGs are like kind of niche when it comes to the licensing market, so I can see.
But it just seems like recently we're getting a whole wave of like licensed tabletop RPG properties.
Yeah, I mean, I alongside my work at Earthborne, I'm currently working on the Stormlight Archive role-playing game. So I don't know how much I can comment on IP role-playing games. I'm a little biased in that regard.
All right. Moving on. I'm gonna apologize in advance that the next few jokes I just kind of got on a fitness trend and it was making my brain going. But have you seen people that lift mini boxes for weights? They call it a privateer bench press. So this actually shocked me. I ended up sending this out on a couple of discords and chats I was in. So Steamforge Games has acquired the War Machine and Iron Kingdoms titles and partners with Privateer Press. So this includes the fantasy war game War Machine. That's also like a lot of people call it Warma Hordes because there was like War Machine was the more kind of mech-ish. Not quite because it was a little unique in that way. But then there was also Hordes, which was the a lot of the more like monstery, but they use like the same system. But also their P3 painting brand, the Iron Kingdoms role-playing line, which is what's set in the War Machine thing. But for the last 2 decades, the Iron Kingdoms title, especially War Machine, have been popular among player and hobbyists for the rich lore and immersive gameplay. Moving forward, Steamforge and Privateer Press will work together on the design and development of these lines. So I know that War Machine has kind of fallen off as far as if you look at some of the hobby trends. I know it, especially around here, a lot of those players ended up moving to Age of Sigmar. But it would just seem, my first thought when this, even though they say they're like partnering here, is just like, is that it for Privateer Press? Is Privateer Press gone now?
Yeah, I mean, what do they have left at this point?
I don't know. I feel like it's more of an acquisition of Privateer Press than it is really the acquisition of the IP.
Yeah, because they had a couple pretty high profile departures from like Will Schick leaving to do Atomic Mass, and
Right.
then they had some folks leave in 2022. So they've been kind of running on fumes for a bit, and like this IP was like the biggest thing they had left. So I actually I was a little shocked by this news too, and so like I feel like what is Privateer now? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be very curious. Like, I imagine, maybe it'll be like more of a Privateer Press is like the contractor that comes up with the ideas and then Steamforge makes it. Maybe that's the confusing part for me is the working together on the design and development. That's the weird part for me because like Steamforge now owns it, so like there's no reason that Privateer would work on it unless maybe it's a hey, we'll keep coming up with writing stuff if you just pay us like contract stuff, and then you guys can publish the games.
Maybe it's just like pleasantries, like,
Maybe.
oh, we're, yeah. Don't worry, we're totally going to still involve Privateer.
Right. But, I mean, for those that really like War Machine and Hordes, Steamforge is probably a good person because, I mean, they heavily pump out stuff all the time. So I imagine this is probably a good thing because there's probably not been... I mean, I think there was a new edition like a year or two ago, but I don't think it did very well, which is probably what resulted in this.
So I hopped on Private Press's website. They got something called Monster Apocalypse.
Yes.
That looks extremely interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those like just throw in mash a bunch of stuff together and like start fighting.
There's a giant like fat sluggish monster thing. It's got power armor.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I've not looked into it too much, but it is like when you take out War Machine, that is like the next biggest thing that they're known for is Monster Apocalypse.
Hey, Chris, they've got terrain.
Recipe says, I have some War Machine bagged from Battle Foam I got on deep clearance. The only Privateer Press minis I ever got were from swag bags at Adepticon. I tried, like long ago, when I say long ago, I mean like 2015, 2016, when I was just starting to get interested in tabletop minis games. I tried War Machine, but it was too detailed for me. I didn't like. I was not a fan. Especially they had like cards where it's like, where did you hit on the mini? Now, granted, I play BattleTech, so
You play Battletech,
that
yeah.
excuse is going out the window. But something about the way it was done was just I didn't like it.
I really liked War Machine's kind of more combo focused tactics in the game compared to, like I as we discussed before the show started, I love me some Warhammer. I'll chuck dice and have my big elaborate interactive diorama, but like playing War Machine felt more like playing like a card game and like pulling off little combos and stuff, and I really liked that about it. And those kind of the steampunk jacks were always pretty rad designs.
The minis were
So
cool looking.
I missed that game a little bit. So if they can do something with it, I'm excited.
Right. I will say though that it's like you can tell how early in my paintings, like if I pull it on, because like the paint is all on there real thick, and it's just like, don't like looking at those minis again. It's definitely
I
something
actually
for
keep
dropping them in the drink and stripping them.
I keep the very first mini I painted. I have it up on a shelf. It's awful. I painted it like it had to be like late middle school maybe.
Yeah.
Just atrocious, but like, I can't bear to get rid of it.
I have some of the ones still, but they're packed away. But there's some that are the first set I painted, which is funny because like those Zombicide minis I broke out over the weekend, Philip.
Uh-huh.
Like it took me 5 years to paint that huge amount. So like there's like a big difference in
There's a gradient in
there's
quality.
a gradient, yeah, in quality. Yep, exactly.
Okay, Chris, we got to play this. The Kraken is wielding a submarine.
Monster Apocalypse is pretty cool. It kind of came out to crickets. It was going to be their next big thing in like, it had to be like 2008 or something, right? And it never got the momentum I think they were hoping for it to have. But yeah, the designs and stuff, like the pitch is great, right?
Yeah.
Yes. This is great. They've got their legally distinct Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. Oh, there's another episode going on. I'm over here.
All right. Moving on. Apparently, Adepticon needs some exercise as they're taking on Milwaukee.
Oh.
I just hear my wife in the background like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna effing die." She doesn't have her headphones on.
Just a reminder, she signed up for this.
Adepticon is moving to Milwaukee. Organizers for Adepticon, the rapidly growing Chicago area gaming miniatures convention, have announced that the event will be moved to Milwaukee for the 2025 and subsequent shows. The move is being made because the show has outgrown its current space at the Schaumburg Convention Center in the northwest Chicago suburb of Schaumburg, Illinois. So it was at 8th. Yeah, so for those unaware, Adepticon is like the Gen Con of minis games. Like, when you go to Gen Con, there's a lot of stuff that happens there, but it is more like board games and RPG focus. Like, there are...
It's everything you can do on a table.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there are mini stuff there, but it's kind of like well, we're here too. But, like, Adepticon, that's where, like, all the releases happen. That's where... Or, like, the announcements and everything happen. You know, you get, like, swag bags full of stuff. So, I've always wanted to go, but Chicago's out there, man. It's kind of... That's a trip. And now it's even further, because now it's in Milwaukee.
Now it's in Milwaukee. But, like, you look on a map.
Right.
Okay, you could hop on a boat and just get to Milwaukee and avoid the traffic.
Is it really that close? Because I was wondering, because it always seemed like it was a Chicago thing, and I'm like...
It is Milwaukee to Chicago.
Yeah, Milwaukee's just north of Chicago. It's not that far.
It's an
But
hour and a half.
I imagine it's probably cheaper to get space in Milwaukee for a convention than it is in Chicago. But Beetle makes a
Could be
good
too.
point. It's going to be a problem for international travelers because they're still going to need to basically go to Chicago and then get rerouted
Then
up
do
to
the hour and a half to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, March 26th to March 30th, 2025 at the Baird Center in downtown Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't think I've ever been to Wisconsin.
I was born in Wisconsin.
Ooh.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Fun fact that it mentions in this article is that Milwaukee was where the departure of Gen Con. That's where Gen Con left on it before it went to Indianapolis. So this is the biggest game convention in Milwaukee since the departure of Gen Con in 2003. Yeah. So the people be like, why are they doing this? Well, as they mention here, it's going to give them triple the space.
Yeah.
They were basically running out of space at that convention center, and so now they got it. They had a 20% growth over the previous year. So with that kind of growth, they needed the extra space. Just like how Nova Open used to be in Northern Virginia, in Crystal
then they
City,
moved to
and
the-
then they moved to the heart of DC. But
Yeah.
the amount of space they had like doubled.
And I don't know, but the convention center in Chicago is you probably can't just be like the ICC for Gen Con and just move 2 walls
Yeah.
and there's the rest of the convention center to use. Yeah.
But you have to think that somewhere in Chicago's a big city. You have to think somewhere there's enough space for Adepticon to happen.
Right, but that's where I think, like, I feel like the problem was money. Like,
Yeah.
I bet it was way cheaper in Milwaukee than it was in Chicago. But
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
all right, last fitness-related pun here. Did you know that you can get in shape playing RPGs? They really only work on your thighs, though. See, the problem is when you do a bunch of stories on the same companies, you can't, like, you got to find new puns for, like, the same words every time.
Yeah.
Like, how many Fantasy Flight stories have I talked about? And I have to come up with a new pun every time. So, Paizo announced a new cooperative board game, Pathfinder Quest. So as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, is this supposed to be like that Pathfinder Adventures? Which it was like, oh, we're going to take the Pathfinder RPG and gamify it into cards. And since then, they've had a second edition. So now, maybe that's why. Now we have it, Pathfinder Quest, designed for 1 to 4 players. It's set in the fictional region of Darkmoon Vale, where players are tasked with saving the town of Falcon's Hollow from a series of threats. Is that a Thaco joke? No, it was like Paizo, Thizo.
Yeah.
That was
I don't
right.
know, Chris.
That
I'm
was-
thinking the best thing about Pathfinder Quest is the box.
I mean, it's a pretty good box. I mean, a little Balrog looking action. I don't know if that's what's actually called, but that's what it looks like. Players assume the roles of various characters, each with customizable ancestries, classes, and skills. Unfolds 8 of 12 possible adventures, with the outcome of each influenced by player decisions and dice rolls, ensuring a unique experience with each playthrough. It's available for pre-order via backer kit crowdfunding, launching this fall. But yeah, it's going to have map tiles, custom dice, hundreds of cards, pawns, and selected miniatures. But yeah, I feel like this is... I know that Pathfinder Adventure card game was very well liked. A lot of people did like it. So if you were that kind of thing and you were itching for some new content, then this looks like it should be up your sleeve. I'm just going to guess at least $100 for the box, based on what they were talking about having in it.
Yeah, given that they're going for the kind of like map, and it sounds like a big adventure book. Yeah, I
Yeah.
could see it hitting
I would
100
not
for
be
sure.
surprised if it's closer like 120. Especially given the way inflation. All
The
right.
box, at least in this render, the box doesn't look enormous, but it does seem like they're trying to kind of play into that adventure campaign space, you know, kind of post Gloomhaven.
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Or Descent,
genre.
or any number of
Yep.
those types of games. All right, last joke, I promise. If you tour the Hollywood Walk of Fame, is that considered a Star Trek? So I saw this, and of course it was Star Trek, so I immediately thought of you, Philip. So that's
I
why
see that.
you'll be happy to know that anytime I see a Star Trek story that's not just some random one-off, then I make sure to put it in here for you. So
Hey.
Star Realms is getting a Star Trek themed version. So it's set to pre-order with a scheduled release of September 20th, 2024. This new version of the classic Star Realms game was first announced back in March. I must have missed that story somewhere. But the reskin game features the same gameplay from the classic game. However, it replaces the Star Realms factions with Star Trek factions, including the Romulans, Klingons, Dominion, and Starfleet. The box comes with 130 game cards, a point counter, a playmat, and a rulebook. So Star Realms, if in case you didn't know what that was man, that was a thing. I want to say that was like 2014. There was like Origins where it was just this box. It was just a cheap box of cards, and it was like all everyone was talking about when it was released because like it was just a cheap game. But it gave you the feel of let's see, I'm trying to think of deck building games that you've played. So think like the DC deck building game or Clank without the board.
Okay.
Where you're picking up cards and then using those cards to buy other cards, etc., etc. But that's kind of the nature of these games. But it did really well. And then they came out with an app, and it was one of the first board game apps that was like actually really, really good. And so that made it explode even more. I just the only downside I have is I kind of wished. So they came out with they had Star Realms, and then they had Hero Realms, and the Hero Realms was kind of like it had like a little bit of a campaign aspect to it. And I kind of wish the Star Trek one did that instead of it just being a pure deck building game.
Gotcha.
Because I feel like
Yeah, that's a good point. That'd be a better fit
right.
for like Star Trek's very narrative driven.
Yeah, and it wouldn't just be, hey, we took this and we pasted a theme on, and boom, it's. So that's. I mean, we'll see. We don't have the full details, so it's possible. Maybe it is, but I'm feeling it's probably not. I'm feeling it's probably very similar to just the classic Star Realms game.
Yeah, I imagine kind of a reskin situation.
Yeah. Although, if I were to buy Star Realms, I would probably buy Star Trek Star Realms over regular Star Realms at this point.
The website, hang on, let me find it again. This one of the reviews. Finally, someone is making a deck building game where the goal is to just kill your frickin' opponent.
Hang on one
Those
second.
exist, right?
Oh yeah.
There's more like combo building to then kill your opponent.
Yeah.
Arena Season 24-05.
Of what?
It says recent news on the Star Realm site.
Gotcha. Could be the app. I got cats in here trying to start trouble. If you heard a cat screaming in the background.
Just keep a spray bottle behind you.
Yeah, I know, right? What's that random spray bottle for? All right. So before we get back to the interview, I will say that if you like this show, make sure you go check out boardsandSwords.com/Patreon. Help support the show. It helps us do things like bonus bits, which is actually going to be free this week because we just had a grand old time playing D&D in the woods, and we want to talk about it for everybody. So we're actually going to stay on after the show here and do our bonus bits live. And then they will get sent out into the regular feed with everything else. So that's the kind of stuff that you normally get if you subscribe at least for just $1. The patreon.com/boardsandswords or boardsandswords.com/Patreon. Either one works.
I know you said you're going to cover it at the end of the show, but did you play D&D in the woods? Is that what you did?
Well, I mean, like we were at a villa in the mountains.
Ooh, okay.
So, but it was like complete. Like there was a deer that walked like 6 feet in front of me and just like went past
and didn't care. Just looked at you.
Does not care.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm woken up.
Okay. Well, I was first picturing you all are just around a campfire in
Oh,
the
yeah.
woods. So
We thought
Sounded
about
amazing.
it. We did think about it. There was a little balcony, but anyways, so getting back to Earthborne games. So you started off, you got Earthborne Rangers, and the biggest reason I knew about this game was the partnership with Team Covenant. I feel like that was huge. That was a few. I mean, it makes sense because, like you said, there's a lot of ex Fantasy Flight people at Earthborne, and I know like Team Covenant's been big on a lot of the LCG distribution, but they've got a very what's the word I'm looking for? Committed audience that when this popped up, and I'm pretty sure that's how I first heard about it was through their emails. That's already a built-in audience that's going to buy this game anyways.
Oh yeah, the Team Covenant, yeah, has a very kind of installed fan base that is, uh, they do so much to like build their community, discuss with their, like work with their community and support their, support the products, their subscriptions and stuff that they did for Fantasy Flight back in the day, and so they have very dedicated people, and yeah, our connection to them, we'd worked with them before when we were at Fantasy Flight, but the connection mostly comes from Andrew, who's friends with like Steven and Zach and a couple of the guys over there. And so he kind of like was talking to them throughout this whole process, and they're interested in doing, you can kind of see Covenant has been bringing on all sorts of different games and like working to kind of explore new ways of handling distribution,
Yeah.
which is it's a tricky nut to crack because like distribution in the tabletop industry is very kind of solidified. There's a system, right, with the distribution companies, and Team Covenant's trying to kind of do something a little different. So Andrew's excited about that. And so we've kind of worked with Team Covenant throughout the process. So I think they promoted the original Kickstarter, and then we ended up doing mostly exclusive retail in North America through them. Uh, our game, because of going through crowdfunding, wasn't quite like a one-to-one match with their kind of subscription model, which is kind of based around Fantasy Flight's constant release of packs. But we were able to kind of work with them and find something that worked for the type of product we were making. Just because they're such great guys, and like we trusted them and knew that like we kind of wanted to work with them if we could.
Sorry, I was just getting some pictures of the game up here for.
Oh yeah, I guess I should like pitch the game. I probably should have my like elevator pitch for both the studio and the game on hand, but I'm kind of shooting from the hip today. But Rangers is a cooperative adventure card game. So you're building a deck of cards that represents this ranger, this character you're playing, and you're playing in this kind of far future setting that takes place on Earth, but thousands of years from now. This climate apocalypse has kind of ravaged the planet, but then humanity kind of banded together, worked together, and helped the planet recover through all these kind of super science experiments and stuff that happened around the planet, and left the planet very transformed from what it is today. And so you're now part of a humanity that lives a lot more kind of in tune with nature and in tune with the planet than kind of modern day. And you're in an area in what is currently the Rocky Mountains, and there's this kind of area called the Valley, and you are rangers who kind of help oversee the people who live there and the wilderness all around you. And you kind of help people, but also deal with crises as they come up. And you play as this character through kind of card-based gameplay. It's a campaign game that you play across like depends on how you approach the story, but like 20 plus play sessions or days, and you kind of grow and build your deck and play this kind of card game to unfold the narrative and explore this valley you live in. And it's folks might be familiar with other cooperative card games like the Arkham Horror card game or the Lord of the Rings card game that Fantasy Flight put out. We share some of that DNA, but our game is kind of fully open world, and you have this valley you can explore. You can go anywhere, do anything. You can explore the story, ignore the story, and we take a lot of DNA from role-playing games in that, and we wanted to give players total freedom. So it's less of like a scenario-based card game and a little bit more like a tabletop role-playing session.
Gotcha. Yeah, and also you can definitely tell the kind of FFG uh, DNA behind the scenes kind of feast, because it's like when I look at this card art, like if you squint just the right way, I'm like, are those Android Netrunner cards? Like the graphic design definitely gives me kind of a Netrunner vibe.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, we kept it fairly minimalist,
Mhm.
and like there's that slight kind of techie angle because it's still in kind of this future setting, even though it's a little more naturey. So I can definitely see the Netrunner comparison. Uh, Evan Simonet is our graphic designer and art director, and he did like a huge number of the art pieces in the game. I don't remember if he worked directly on Netrunner, but he was at FFG for many years, so there's definitely a lot
Entirely
of shared
possible.
DNA. Yeah.
In fact, it's even more so because was it MJ now works at Earthborne Games as well.
Yeah, Maxine recently joined us. She is now the lead designer on Rangers going forward. So I'm kind of the design director over at Earthborne Games. So I oversee all of our various projects, both Rangers as well as we have another card game that we haven't quite announced details on coming up, as well as several other games kind of in the pipeline. So I'm overseeing all of these and helping out on individual projects. But Maxine, she is kind of taking the lead on Rangers going forward. Uh, and yeah, she worked on a bunch of card games at
Oh, yeah.
Fantasy Flight. Probably most noteworthy is her time on the Arkham Horror card game. She helped design that and then saw it through a lot of its biggest sets. She was responsible for.
Yeah, that's why it was both sad and awesome at the same time when there was the announcement about her leaving FFG, and then it wasn't. I mean, there was a delay, but then like suddenly you hear about her being over at Earthborne, and it's like, okay, cool, we still get awesome stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, and she got right to work. We're having her work on a couple digital things that like print and play or like downloadable things, so that some of her content will like be in players' hands even faster than like the normal print cycle. So she's still gonna be doing some cool stuff right now on Rangers, but we've already been talking about other projects, cool projects she can work on. So you'll see some cool new stuff from her soon enough.
So if you had so the game's been out, what's you said since like March? The when did the
Um,
when did Kickstarter started getting their copies?
when did we actually start fulfilling? No, it's been a little longer than that. I think
Okay.
we started fulfilling near the end of the year. God, now I can't remember. One of you guys joked earlier that like it was just 2018, and I sometimes feel like that.
It's the weird part about Cove is it felt like no time at all and forever at the same time.
Yeah. No, I think we started fulfilling later last year.
Okay.
Is when we started.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right, because I think you would. I first got the card to talk with you guys from a booth at PAX Unplugged, and I think there were some products.
Yeah,
there.
we were selling copies at our booth there.
So
So yeah, we started fulfilling late last year, getting all the first run into people's hands, and then we did a reprint Kickstarter that was in like March-ish, to do a second printing, but also because we had basically sold through our first printing at that point, but also to kind of do a couple expansions, to fund a couple expansions.
yeah, I was gonna ask about like, have you had the reasons like, okay, well the game's been out like 6 months now. Clearly, there's probably a whole bunch of people that have already probably beaten it, and they're like, what's next?
Oh yeah, we definitely get that. A lot of our kind of most dedicated fans dove in and like played through it fairly quickly. That being said, like since it's a longer game, a lot of people are taking their times, and we still see campaign reports floating in. So we've got a little bit of time, but it's still only like 20 sessions, so we want to get more content out to folks. We do some like we're doing some little bits of content in between to hopefully give people things to do with the game while they wait for the next campaign as well. But it is kind of a tricky balance to strike. I think that's one of the reasons FFG did like all their cycle packs and stuff for a lot of their LCGs, is to kind of
Break up
keep
that gap. Yeah.
yeah, keep interesting content constantly coming. Because we bundle it all, you kind of have this year of downtime, which, you know, can be disruptive. People can forget about you and stuff.
Yeah, but as long as it's good, they'll come back.
Yeah, that's the hope. And so far, people are liking it a lot. They've been a lot more forgiving. Like, you know, it's this massive undertaking. It's both a giant choose your own adventure book, but an entire card game.
Yeah.
Like, so, and like we're at the time we were like 3 people, and so, you know, it had its quirks or like its little errors, and like it was rough around the edges compared to some of the more polished stuff I've worked on in the past. But people were a lot more willing to be forgiving of that, I think, because it's like this it's taking risks, it's trying new things,
Yeah.
it's like got this positive theme, and so I think it gave us a lot of forgiveness that I don't think I know other projects I've worked on that came out of like a bigger company like FFG probably wouldn't have gotten that same kind of forgiveness. So that was nice.
Yeah. I feel
Um,
like there's a couple of things in there, because there was the you know, the theme and the how you're doing it, you know, trying to be more sustainable. Like, everybody understands that that creates problems. There's a reason that games don't do that for as a regular basis. Like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So like there's a little bit of like leeway given in there, but then I feel like you're also kind of like, you had a lot of trust in the bank from the people behind the scenes. Like, we know these people can do good work. Like, this isn't just some, like, if it had been completely different people trying to do this, I think it would be a lot there might be a lot less leeway with the company
yeah,
versus, like, you know, you gotta have that built. It's kind of the benefit of bringing those well-known names and having that kind of it's like built. It's like built-in trust with your community almost.
I totally agree with that. I think that our first Kickstarter would have been a lot harder to sell. I don't think it would have done as well if it weren't for our names. Our first Kickstarter was a little atypical for a lot of Kickstarters at the time. You know, like even now, a lot of Kickstarters go to their campaign and the game is basically done.
Yeah.
Like, you know, all the art's done, and we were coming and we were like very open about the fact like this game isn't done, and like we had a little chart that showed here's where we are on writing and design, here's where we are on art. Like, we didn't have a demo when the Kickstarter first launched. We ended up putting one out like a little bit midway into the Kickstarter, but we didn't really have stretch goals, and because we didn't want to. Like, that was kind of against the philosophy of like, you know, part of the sustainable idea of the game is to just make what the game needs, right? Don't make a bunch of extra stuff. So we didn't want stretch goals. So we didn't have stretch goals. We didn't have a finished game yet. We just had this promise. And so I do think that our reputation and showing that we had delivered on lots of products before was critical for people trusting us at that phase.
Well, in essence, you were really using Kickstarter for what it was originally designed, which is, does anybody want this?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
before I go spend a bunch of money on or making this thing, does anybody want this?
Yeah, and part of me wishes, yeah, more it was still used for more of that, right? Instead of just like being basically a pre-order front end for these large companies. Like, don't get me wrong, I play some CMON games, but like,
Yeah.
you know, they don't they're not worried about whether or not the next, you know, Marvel United thing is going to sell, right? They're just worried about how much. So they
Right.
don't really need Kickstarter for the same reason that like some new person coming up who's trying to make it needs Kickstarter.
Yeah. Yep. So you mentioned a demo, because one of the comments in here from Rusty Beetle is, I'm gonna need to find someone who owns this so I can try it. It sounds awesome. But like, if you look, you know, I know it's sold out on the website, but it's, I want to, it was $120 for the core box, or $100?
I think we're $100 right now.
$100, which, I mean,
I should know this off the top of my
if
head.
it's someone that isn't familiar with some of those previous games, that can be a hard pill to swallow, knowing nothing but like, oh, that game sounds cool. but I don't want to just unplayed, sight unseen, throw down the money on that. So there is a demo for people that can kind of get an idea of how the game plays.
Yeah, so you have a tabletop simulator demo.
Oh, awesome.
For people who play TTS, you can just go search Earthborne. It's the first thing that'll pop up. And so we've got that lets you play through the first few days of the game, build decks. I think it has like every starting player card in there, so you can build any decks you want and stuff. We also have all those same files as print and play files on our website, but it's a lot of cards. So
Yeah.
I do recommend people use the TTS one instead of like cutting and sleeving a bajillion cards.
That would be kind of against the sustainability aspect.
Yeah, a little bit. At least, use FSC or recycled paper, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like, it is the $100 price point is kind of a big buy-in, right? It's, I think it's the game is worth that amount. Like, it's a ton. We have like 540 cards in there. It is like the whole campaign. If looking at similar touch points like Arkham Horror, we have like the equivalent content of like the Arkham Horror core set, as well as an entire like deluxe box and cycle, right?
Okay.
All folded into a single product, right? It is the entire open world experience in one box. And actually I think we talked about this on one of our most recent Earthborne Games podcasts, but if we were to take all this content and divide it up in a similar strategy to like the cycles that FFG used to do and stuff, it would be you'd end up spending way more than $100 on all this content.
Right.
Just because like, each cycle pack, the dollar or the cent per card ratio is just way worse when you divide them up into all these little tiny packs.
Right. So that's interesting because when I saw that price, my first thought was like, oh, well, they're trying to be more sustainable and using all these different products that maybe aren't as typical. And I thought maybe that was kind of where some of that price comes in. Did that actually have that much of an impact, like, on the development of the game?
It does. It definitely impacts the price. I don't know the exact ratio, but to just ballpark you, I'd say we're probably paying at least 3 times as much per unit to produce this than we would on an equivalent product. Like, if we were just cranking it off in China at like the standard factories that everybody uses.
Yeah.
So we're paying a decent amount more per unit, but we do a lot of our sales direct. Like Kickstarter. I mean, obviously Kickstarter takes a cut. Well, lots of people take a cut. It's amazing how many people get fingers in the pie along the way. But still, your margins are way better on something like Kickstarter than they are going to be through a distributor. Like, the distributor discount is huge. So because of that, we can kind of absorb some of that cost. Like, our
fair.
price, our dollar per card ratio, like as far as like what you're getting, is pretty decent, all things considered. Even at that $100 price point.
Right.
Some people balk at it because it's just cards, but you have to think like, there's 540 cards in this, all with these unique illustrations and stuff. Like, this is, and an entire like giant campaign book, like this big choose your own adventure campaign. You're getting a lot of value. That value is just on, it's not plastic. And I do think a lot of people analyze value of games on crowdfunding based on plastic, on miniatures.
That is entirely true.
So some of this value, like, is a little on things people sometimes like are a little less sexy, as it were.
Yeah, and that's kind of the benefit of going the route that you guys have with Covenant, is it allows you to do that different sort of distribution model than going the standard distribution route.
We have done a little bit of going to retail, especially in Europe. We ended up in a lot of retail stores, so we could still make the margin work, but it's not great.
Gotcha.
If I'm being honest.
Do you find that people are more interested in kind of the theme and interested in the kind of sustainability aspects more in Europe than, like, say, in America? Because I feel like in the little bits of research I've done over the years, it seems like, as a general stereotype, Europe is a lot more into, say, recycling and sustainability than we are.
I don't know. Anecdotally, I don't think I can say that.
Okay.
We have, like, at least in our community, a lot of the very outspoken, interested folks are all over the board, right? We do have a strong American presence, obviously, because we're America
Right.
based. So like, but anecdotally, I haven't necessarily seen that lopsidedness. Some of our most passionate, um, uh, people who are most passionate about sustainability are from America.
Okay. So while mentioning that, what was maybe the hardest part about kind of the goal of trying to make the game as sustainable as possible?
Oh, there's so many hard things about that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
It's
what was probably like or what was the hardest that you didn't expect to be as hard?
Well, I mean, one thing we'd hoped to, and one thing we promised to achieve, it was like our one and only stretch goal was on the first Kickstarter was local production. So it, this, I'll explain it, and it seems really simple, but actually it was kind of a pain, which is basically printing copies of the game on the continent they're being sold. So print all the North American copies in North America, print all the European copies in Europe, print them kind of locally and then so we don't have to have any international freight. Because like international freight, you put it in a shipping container, you throw it on a ship, it goes across the ocean, is pretty bad for the environment. So we can really reduce transport by doing local production. But like the problem is all the places that are built up for producing board games, not all of them, but a lot of them are in China. And like definitely the ones that do it the cheapest are in China. Like I think you'll see on like 60 to 70% of Kickstarters out there, they all produce at Panda, which is a pretty big printer over there. So we needed to locate people in North America and Europe to do our printings. So that wasn't too bad. We know people, we know factories. But then we also needed to locate factories that could meet all of our other goals. So we wanted to do,
Right.
Fully FSC paper, which is the Forest Stewardship Council. We wanted to do aqueous coatings, which are non-UV coatings, so they're water soluble, fully like compostable, recyclable coatings for the cards instead of the plastic that gets sprayed on every card. We wanted to do like there was all these things that we needed, and the problem is like especially FSC, the certification goes through the whole supply chain, so it's very demanding, and we also needed to actually print this game and get it out to people. Like before we ran out of money, because our first Kickstarter did okay, but not incredible. We had to buy all this art and stuff. So like finding a place in both America and Europe who could sync up, like make sure their printings were the same quality, get all the same supplies, get all the sustainable supplies we needed, just turned out to be this massive headache of like, and it's not like we have a ton of weight to throw around either, right? We're this like little brand new studio, so like we can't like just be like, well, we'll pull all our business or something because they don't really care. So just trying to leverage all that and everything ended up being very challenging. We ended up producing the whole first print run in Germany at Ludofact. They were great. They were very cool to work with, and they care about sustainability too. They get the vast majority of their power from green sources, and like they were great to work with. But we weren't able to coordinate with a place in the U.S. to do it, so we ended up doing just one transatlantic freight for the core set. So that was kind of a bummer because we promised that we were going to do these local productions. But we are now we've had some practice, we've had some lead time, and so with our second printing, we've been able to coordinate. And so we're doing a production in North America, we're doing a production in Europe, and we're likely to do a production out in Asia, specifically for Asian markets. So it took us a little bit of time, but we finally got there. But that was probably the most difficult thing about the sustainability.
I would imagine so, because you don't want like the U.S. version of the game to be radically different from the European version in terms of quality and printing. And yet, at
Yeah,
the
and we're actually working. We're doing something we've never done before, which is we're having two factories now coordinate. And like factories don't normally talk to each other that much because they just do their thing.
right.
We're actually having these two factories like work together and talk to each other and coordinate to make sure all of their stock is the same and like colors are the same. So we're hoping we can kind of sync those up pretty well.
That'd be really cool. It'd be nice if some of the U.S. ones were also like running on green power as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to chat with them. But Ludofact makes it like it is like Ludofact Germany. It's one of their like they make a very specific goal of it,
Right.
which is very cool.
So I think Philip may have answered this question, but we did have a question about the website mentions, and I had seen this as well. There's the core box, and then there's the Earthborne card doubler. What is that?
Yeah, I think that is a pain in our butt. It is that thing has caused way more questions. It's funny because like so the doubler, like Philip said, it's all it does is it adds a whole extra set of just the player cards in the core set. So we come with 2 copies of every player card in the core set, which 2 copies is like the limit of how many you can put in a starting deck. And there's enough player cards that you can build 4 player decks, but like it means that you're basically using every single starting player card effectively. Not every single one, but like the 4th player will have no real big decisions to make. You know, you can when you build your character,
Right. They're
you get
just
to choose your
whatever's
like
left.
background and your specialty. Your background's like what you used to be, and your specialty is what you're doing now in the Rangers, and those give you different card sets. And so by the time you get to the 4th player, all the other backgrounds and specialties are chosen, so they're just stuck with whatever 2 are left. So this doubles all the cards, which means that people can double up, and like 2 players can play the same background or the same specialty or whatever. This is something like in a lot of other LCGs, people will just do this by buying a second copy of the core set. It's pretty standard practice. But we didn't like that because then people are going to spend $100 on and to get a bunch of cards they don't need second copies of. Get a bunch of cards they're just going to like recycle or get rid of, which was kind of wasteful. So we made this product that's like just the cards you want to double up, right?
Right.
But it's caused so much confusion, and like so many people reach out to us, and like we get a lot of questions like when we're running the campaigns that like there's like there's confusion about what it is, but then there's also like people who are like, are you trying to pull one over on us, like sell us something we don't need or whatever? And we're like, we're actually not. We're trying to not sell you, like we're trying to not sell you cards you don't need.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's not it maybe it's just the fact that I've played so many of these LCGs where it's like, I mean, it's kind of the reason why Fantasy Flight did the investigators versus the adventure kind of expansions. Instead of just having one box that's a whole new expansion, they split the cards up. So it's like, here's all the story cards and here's all the upgrade cards. Because when you get these kind of games, everyone wants to like build a whole bunch of decks, and like, they want to really get those neurons firing of like, this card works with this card and that card works with this card. And sometimes you have a couple of players that both want to use like that. Well, I want 2 copies of that in my deck. I've definitely had that happen where like playing Arkham, and it's like, well, you can't have that card because I only have 2 of them and they're in that person's deck.
That was the first thing
Oh,
we
yeah.
did with X-Wing. Was like, oh yeah, this is cool. I need more ships. Buy
Yeah.
the second core box.
I mean,
and X-Wing would be brutal because there'd be like this one upgrade, and you want to like run it on like some swarm list, and so it's like better
You
buy
gotta buy
8 of
6
this
copies
ship.
of the A-Wing to put it
Yeah.
on your TIE fighters. Yeah, that's.
I have 4 copies of the original Arkham Horror set
Whoa.
because I just there was a couple of like a lot of the, was it like you get 1 copy of the original, like the each class set. So just having enough that like somebody could have 2 copies in their set, and then another person could also have a card or 2 of that card in their set as well. It just made for, there's a lot of staples that even after you play a couple expansions, like the starter one, the deck you start with, you want to have like those cards in this kind of deck. So
yeah.
no, I
And that's
totally get it.
that's exactly then that's exactly the experience we made this for. But we've talked about this for like maybe if we went with a different name or something like. But I think I've probably answered more card doubler questions than any other question that's come up in our crowdfunding campaigns.
There you go. But yeah, so that makes, and I feel like it also is a bigger problem when you play with bigger groups, because like if you're playing with 2 people, it may not be as big of an issue unless, like you said, somebody wants to play like the same background. But like once you get to like the 4 players, like you said, it's like that last person's just like, well, whatever's left.
Yeah, I get the dregs. And then you don't need it at all if you're playing solo. And we actually do like true solo was a really important thing to us when we were making this game. Andrew plays a lot of games true solo, so we actually have a pretty big solo community, and that's one thing where just making sure that solo players didn't buy it out of a sense of like completion since they don't need it at all.
Right. Now, just making sure, because just in case anyone's, when you say true solo, you're talking about just one deck. Because I know some people, when they play solo, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to run 2 characters, so I have a better chance of getting stuff. But true solo, I'm assuming it's just one deck.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, a common thing in these cooperative games, is the need for, you can play it solo, but you're basically playing 2 characters, right? And we wanted playing one character to, or like sometimes playing one character is kind of like this sacrifice. Like you lose a certain amount of kind of coordination or like interactions that make the game interesting. And we wanted to make sure that the game still felt compelling and interesting if you only have that single character. And you don't, like we don't want that solo player to feel like they're playing some kind of subpar experience where they're juggling 2 decks or whatever. We mostly got there, though. Like, naturally, you have more players, you have more things going on, and things interact. So, like, I will say that, like, at 2 players, there are some cards on the board, things that like represent the environments that are a little more dynamic because they have like basically more space to play around with the more players there are. So you lose a little bit, but I think we've gotten pretty high marks for like people say good things about our true solo experience, and I think it doesn't sacrifice too much.
Awesome. So say someone is just hearing about this today with this show. So right now, sold out on the website. What do they need to do to keep an eye out for like you mentioned a new Kickstarter coming up for more expansions and content, or say like we got Gen Con and stuff coming up. Like what is the path forward if somebody wants to dive into this?
Yeah, we actually our pledge manager for our most recent game found, we did a game found in the spring that was the second printing as well as some expansions. And the pledge manager is still open for that. And Game Found's very open to letting people in. So you can still jump on and grab this game if you want. You can just search Earthborne Rangers on Game Found, and you have like 1 week left to dive in if you're interested in it. If you don't want to just throw your money at us and you want to wait and see, this printing will be coming out right near the end of the year. So we're planning on like right at the end of 2024 is when it'll be hitting store shelves, and you'll be able to buy it from Team Covenant. You can search them up and keep an eye on their store, or just sign up to our newsletter at earthbornegames.com to keep an eye out for the game, and there'll be retail copies available at the end of the year. To your Gen Con thing, unfortunately, our studio won't be at Gen Con. I will be there if people want to say hi, but we'll have a booth. I think we're gonna go to PAX Unplugged this year. We did that last year, and that show was great. Like,
oh yeah,
good
and
vibes.
Plus,
like,
that should be around
time.
what you're talking about for end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. We should have copies. So PAX Unplugged right now, that's kind of our show. At least in North America, we do some European shows too. But we just had a really good time out there, so we're gonna keep doing that show for now.
Yep.
Beetle asks us, when does the Mecha expansion come out?
Well, there are these like exosuit legs that you could put on to like hike through the wilderness a little bit better. That's like, stage 1 of mechs. Let me think. Are there other? Surely, like eventually, we'll give you enough pieces that you could kind of build your Mecha Ranger deck by combining all the different like robotic supplement parts into one Voltron.
Nice.
No, you just need to have that be some obligatory like evil technology that was probably what corrupted the world.
It's been laying dormant.
It's been laying dormant, and somebody accidentally activated it.
Well, so we do have the valley, which is kind of the nature area that this is set in, is on top of this massive arcology, uh, this underground arcology that was housing all of these people called the Estians who built all this technology. And so you get little hints of it. You can dive down into it just a little bit in the core game, but you mostly stay up in the valley itself. But our first expansion goes underground and dives into these ancient ruins underground of the Estians.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
there's not too many mechs, but there are some robots and some
Same
other
thing.
like interesting ancient technology. One question one of the big things is that a lot of the like human experiments, they genetically engineered a lot of things and like changed the environment in these really dramatic ways in this attempt to save the planet. And so we kind of use how much nature has been warped by human hands as kind of this very overt way of talking, like asking what is natural in a world so impacted by humanity. We just ask it in this like incredibly inflated way, right? Like that's way more dramatic than our modern day, but we explore a lot of that in this expansion.
Philip, I'm getting Defiance vibes from that.
Yeah. Getting Defiance. I was also getting a little bit of Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some similarities. Like it's that post apocalypse.
Yeah.
There's the machines and ecology working together. We have more weird genetically engineered creatures and fewer robots running around.
Yes.
Though I guess Horizon Zero Dawn puts the robots running around in nature bar really high. So
Yeah. All right. Well, before we end the show, I got a small game show here, and because assuming if the computer actually is gonna, all right, I'm gonna have to pull up my notes somewhere else because it's acting up. But I basically, oh, there it goes. Now it decided it went over. We're talking about sustainability and that sort of thing. So I was like, wouldn't it be nice if we did a game show evolved around like recycling? So unfortunately, the latest numbers I can get is 2018. This is from like the EPA's website. But I have here like what are the most recycled materials in the U.S. And so what I have here is I have a bunch of different categories, and we're going to do Price is Right rules here. So these are in thousands of tons, and I will tell you that these numbers are thousands. So for instance, I'll give you the all others category that they have here is like what they consider for others is like rubber, leather, textiles, wood. So this is like the miscellaneous category. Was 8,250,000 tons. So that's like the miscellaneous was 8,000, just to kind of give you a scale here. So I'm gonna give a category, and we're gonna actually we'll do this a little different than Price is Right. I'm going to have we'll have Andrew guess a number, and then Philip, you're gonna go higher, lower.
Okay.
And if you're wrong, then point Andrew. If you're right, point to you. So, all right.
okay, so hang on. Say the number one more time. That was
So the
the
number
other
I'm looking
category?
for, like for all others, is 8,250.
and that was 8,250 tons.
So
Thousands of tons.
yeah. So I guess
Thousands of
it would
tons. Okay, so like
actually
8 million
be
tons.
8,250,000 tons, I
Okay.
believe.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
'Kay.
It's just easy. That's just the way it was presented in here. So we'll start off, and this is also domestic, like municipal trash. Like the most recycled material is like steel, but that's not listed in here. So we're talking like your average person, their recycling bin.
Okay.
So we will start with paper. So, and Ganner, this is 2018. So Andrew, how many thousands of tons of paper do you think is recycled? I believe this is in a
I
year.
don't know. Like, okay, so
That's
the
why I
other
didn't expect you to
category-
nail it. We're just guessing here.
Okay, so the other category is like 8,000. Do we expect these to like totally eclipse the other category, or like
That's why I gave you a frame
be
of
on par
reference
with
there.
them? Yeah. No, I appreciate that, but this is interesting. We actually had a team from the University of Chicago do a bunch of like sustainable production research for us, but we didn't. And they went and interviewed some recycling centers, but we never actually talked about like total volume in the country. So this is tricky. Okay, so paper is our first one. You said.
Yep, and this is a broad category, so we're including like cardboard and printer paper and newspaper, all of that together.
Okay. Well, I think that the other category is probably larger than these individual categories. So I'm going to say so if we're saying thousands of or like thousands of tons.
Yeah.
I'll say 2,000.
2,000. All right, Philip, higher or lower? Do you think the actual number?
I'm gonna say higher.
Yeah, that's a point for Philip.
Yeah.
Nope. I thought I had a ding on there. Paper is 45,970.
Holy shit! Okay, I was like way off.
Wow.
Okay, paper is 45,000.
So that's
45,970,000
tons every.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, and I will tell you these are not in order. So, but I will tell you that
Okay, that
paper
makes
is your top. I'll tell you paper is the top, but the rest of these it's not. We're not going to be descending in order here.
Oh, interesting. I would have thought that aluminum would be paper. I guess like if you're talking in weight, that might make sense that paper is heavier.
Probably it takes more. All right. So
I built a
next-
lot of cardboard at Walmart. So that's-
so next is glass. How many thousands of tons of glass is recycled in a year?
Okay. So and you said aluminum was you said paper was our top at 40,000?
Yes. And I will say these are kind of I will say they're kind of all over the board. So don't like expect it to be all of them to be in the 45,000 range.
I think glass would be a lot lower. But given this scope, I'll say like 10,000.
Okay. Philip, higher or lower?
Go with lower.
Philip's 2 and 0. Glass is the other end of the spectrum. It is the lowest at 3,060. So 3,060,000.
Oh, so that would have been pretty close with my original paper guess.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I will tell you those are your boundaries. All the other numbers are kind of in between there.
Okay, all right.
All right, next up is our metals. So
Oh, it's just all metals?
all metals.
Oh, just oh.
Here,
not
we'll
steel.
flip that. I can tell you based on the numbers I saw, steel's probably not accounted for in this. But we'll flip this and let Philip guess first.
Okay.
Okay. So all metals,
Like domestic.
domestic of all metals. I'm gonna go with 28,000.
28,000. Okay. Andrew, do you think is he overestimating or is he underestimating?
All metals. But you said 45 was our top. I'm going to go higher.
Higher. That's another point for Philip. But
Gah!
that's only because
Bring me
you
on
went-
your podcast and slaughter me at trivia.
It's actually, like I said, I'm pretty sure this is because it doesn't include steel, but it's only 8,720,000 tons.
Really?
Mm-hmm. All right, and then I'll skip. So I'll let you know that
Start more can drives and like.
So plastics was on here at 3,090. So there's one category left, and that's your yard trimmings and food waste. So,
Oh, interesting.
Philip, I'll let you guess
that-
on this one. Yard trimmings and food waste. They consider those
Yard
recyclable
trimmings and food waste.
because people composting. I don't know how
Yeah,
they
so
get
that goes
those
into-
numbers because like it's not like you're bringing that to a recycling center. Although I guess
Yeah,
maybe they
and,
are
like-
because I know like ours does mulch.
Mm-hmm.
So and then you have like yard bags in some places. So maybe there is some donation there.
You know, I would think this one would be really high though, because like there's so much waste out of like grocery stores and stuff, right?
Yeah. But
But I guess a lot of that
is
just
it
gets
recycled
landfilled.
though?
Yeah.
That's the
So
big one.
Philip, take a guess for
I'm gonna go with 10,000.
10,000. Okay. All right, here's a redemption shot, Andrew. Higher or lower?
Oh man, I'm gonna go 0 for 4 on this, aren't I? I'll go higher.
That's a point. So
Hey, on the board.
24,890. So 24,890,000 tons of yard trimmings and food waste. I think we say that's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
would want to
food
see
wa-
the breakdown of where the sources are.
Yeah, fair.
Just for that one specifically.
Well, like I said, I got this on the EPA's website, so they do have like all their sources marked. I was hoping for something more current, but yeah, the 2018 is the last that it was a report published in 2020 with 2018 data.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like how that plastic number compares to plastic that gets landfilled, right? Like,
Right.
because there's got to be a ton that ends up in the landfills.
Yeah, that was the
Oh,
heart
so
when I was coming up with this. Is there's a lot of different sources on different, especially when you talk about materials and stuff. Like I think I saw like steel alone, I think was like 182 million tons of steel every year is. So was that like 1 trillion tons of steel every year is recycled?
That's wild.
Also, doing this research, I found out concrete is recyclable.
oh,
Hmm.
okay.
That's another one of
So,
like if you look at the world in general, it's like it's like the second or third most recycled material.
Gotcha. So the steel one. So like because we're Americans, we use anything but the metric system. What does that steel thing account to in like cars
Well, I mean, like
or boats? Like how
Like
many boats would that be?
a car's probably what, like 3 tons, maybe.
A car's like 3,500
What-
pounds.
Okay, I guess sure. So Philip, you do the
Okay.
math then.
I don't. Okay. Google, do the math then. Okay, okay.
But yeah, it was
Let's
just
see, so,
a little bit of education there for you.
There we go. Yeah.
well, I'm not surprised there aren't that many numbers. One thing we ran into, like I said, we had some grad students look into a bunch of sustainable production methods and like do research into the different available options in different industries, as well as like what their actual impact is.
Yeah.
Because there's some places where it's a little like uncertain. Like we were looking at bioplastics, so plastics created out of corn and stuff, versus like a lacquered wood. Like after growing and transporting and producing, and like just recyclability and all of these things, like it's really unclear like how those two compare in
Yeah.
actual output. And so they were trying to do some of that, but one of the things they ran into was just how inconsistent the information on especially like recycling was. Also, we were looking into this right near the beginning of the pandemic, and it's just been a really rough time for recycling in our country in general. A lot of then, and I believe even to now, a lot of the material that we're recycling actually just still ends up in landfills.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's something that it's like even if you have the best intentions in recycle, like I watched a documentary on e-waste. So like you know you try and be like I don't want to landfill. I'm gonna take my laptop and take it to I don't know like Apple when they like trade it in. They're like oh we'll recycle it or whatever. I'm not saying they don't, but there's a lot of places where they say they recycle, but it ends up getting shipped to Africa and it just like dumped right off their shores. And like the economy in those parts of Africa is they just go take and burn the plastics, which is not good. and to get
That's
to get
wild.
down to the metal so that they can then sell and make a living. But then you got like there's like video shots of like the fumes like wafting over the markets down there. So that just all the food is being covered in these burning plastics and stuff. And it just
Ugh.
sucks because it's like those people were like trying to do something good, and then because somebody was like, well, it's just easier if we just like dump this than actually try and do what we say we're going to do.
Yeah. But it's not all bad because like I don't know there's progress being made, especially in tabletop games. We've had a lot of
Oh
like
yeah.
positive progress in the last few years. Even like I was kind of talking about Chinese manufacturers, but a lot of them are starting to carry more sustainable materials and do a lot more of that. And like, so we're making strides at the very least.
I'm doing my part by keeping all my plastic sprues instead of throwing them away. I've been
What are you keeping them for? What do you use them for?
I've been trying for a while to figure out what I was going to use them for, but I just started last week while I was working on some stuff. I've been chopping them up into little bricks, and then I use them as the basing on my
Oh,
mini.
cool.
So they're getting just like extra used instead of just tossed away.
I think it was a former coworker of mine made a sprue golem where he took
Yeah,
all the sprues and like kind of formed it into this creature.
I've seen that. I've also got a bunch that is I've like melted down with like acetone to use as like a goo for like filler and stuff.
Oh, cool. Kind of like green stuff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like a putty.
Yep. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming on to the show and hanging out with us. So you mentioned best place to go is probably Earthborne or EarthborneGames.com. I'm assuming to get on the mailing list you talked about.
Yep. You can. Everybody can head to earthbornegames.com. There we've got. You can sign up for the mailing list. You can go find our game found to jump in here on last second. Our website will have links to the Covenant store and all of our materials and the demo and everything else. So head there. That'll send you to any place you want to go.
Awesome. Well, with that, then I'm gonna. That's our show for tonight. Take it away, Philip.
That's been our show. We want to thank Andrew for coming on. Andrew Fischer from Earthborne Games. Go check out the website. That game looks very interesting. I'm gonna have to wait for your reprint to hurry up and grab a copy of it. If you like our show, yeah, you got to check us out. Boardsandswords.com. Boardsandswords.com/live. That's got the link to where we stream plus the schedule. And also check out the rest of the website. Chris keeps that pretty well updated, and it's got all the stuff we've done in the past.
And I'm starting to roll out some more stuff, like some more Kickstarter blog posts and such. Remember those in the chat room. Don't leave yet, because we're going to be doing some more talking afterwards. But send us feedback. You can email us feedback@boardsandswords.com. Let us know who else we need to be having on the show, what other games. Basically, what other games do we need to buy? Because that's the problem with having all these guests. It's like, well, now I want that thing. Like Philip said, it's like now there's another Kickstarter or backer kit or whatever crowdfunding to look for. But feedback at boardsandswords.com. We're also on Facebook at Boards and Swords Pod. I started posting under Boards and Swords again on Twitter, so you can message me there. And then boardsandswords.com. It's got the links to everything, just like the Patreon. Check it out. Help support the show. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another show, and I've got to look real quick to see. I'm trying to remember who we have on there. Steve, we're going to have actually someone from Steamforged Games. I don't know the person yet because they were being really specific and weird about it. But someone from Steamforged Games is going to be on the shows. We were just talking about them, so maybe we'll have to talk about that as well. 2 weeks. In the meantime, remember that every gamer has a story, and this one is biodegradable. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Andrew, for hanging out with us.